Thanks so much, everyone, and welcome back. It's always lovely, truly lovely, to connect with you. Today, I want to talk about coping and dealing with rigid and inflexible personalities. If you don't bend, most certainly at some point you're going to break. People wonder, how does someone become a truly rigid personality? There's a lot of reasons, but one of the things it's important to understand that somewhere in this person's evolution, there are things, people, ideas, thoughts, places that became forbidden, that became actually forbidden. This is bad, stay away from this. Oftentimes, people who grow up having developed a rigid personality, their parents were rigid or they were shamed into it. There can be a variety of reasons, but what I really want to focus on is what do you do if you need to manage this personality, or if you yourself in your sojourn have realized, hey, I'm one of these rigid personalities. I want to do some things to change it and lighten up. I'm going to share some insights that will be applicable for your personal life and your work life as well. Share a couple scenarios with you, and really wanting you to understand that this personality, they create a self-imposed jail for themselves. It's like iron bars that they've really erected around their life. Case in point, I was working some years ago with a woman in her mid 60s, had been working with a shipping and distribution company for many, many years. The company got bought. They wanted to shake things up, brought on a lot of new energy, a lot of millennials. And this threw her into total and complete despair and chaos within herself, not because these new hires, these younger hires were incompetent. They were highly competent. She was suffering because in her very rigid mindset, they have not earned these positions. She had a lot of various stereotypes about this particular group of professionals who are coming in. They would ask her, you want to go to lunch? It was no every time. Celebrations at work, she would not participate in that. So extremely rigid, and had thrown herself into a really harsh jail sentence because they were going on doing fine, excelling in work. Her work started to decline because she had a rigidity that would not allow her to adjust, would not allow her to adjust. And one thing you can always count on is change. Another scenario I will share with you perfectly illustrates the behaviors that are very common in rigid, inflexible personalities. A man in his late 30s was sitting with him a few years ago, and he says to me, I'm just utterly devastated. I'm 5 months into this relationship. We're having dinner. We had talked about plans for the future. We're having light banter. I make a single comment. I didn't realize that this was a trigger spot or a sore spot. I get a call the next day, the relationship is cut off. I was cut off at the knees, and that's really it. No discussion, nothing. And I went on to ask a few more questions. Had you seen rigidity before and inflexibility before? And sure enough, several examples this person shared. And I said, look, as devastated as you are, and I know it hurts, and I know you were, looking far into your future, but this was going to happen sooner than later. Sooner or later, whether it's 5 months in, a year in, or 5 years in, something was going to be triggered. And because for an inflexible person, when they're triggered, go back to what I said in the start, something is triggered. This is bad, or this is forbidden, or I've been shamed in this area. There's no real room for shades of gray. It's seen in black and white. So many people who come across this personality leave perplexed. If you do survive inside of a personality with one of these individuals, there will be rules. There will be regimented. I'll never forget, I had a young lady in her mid-20s. She came to me and said, I love this man dearly, but Sheila, I'm under so many restrictions. He's even put a restriction on my weight. He says he doesn't want me to ever go much past 110. Well, 110 pounds, I guess if you're woman of smaller stature, that's okay. But this woman was nearly 5'9". That's very, that's very, very thin. It's almost a health risk, putting her in that category. And I asked her, well, what about children? What are his thoughts on that? Because naturally, a woman will put on weight. Well, would have a certain amount of time to lose the weight. So he had this all mapped out. And I rarely just, flat out give people blunt, direct advice in a situation like this. But I really did encourage her to reconsider, because it was just so regimented. And when you join with that, in other words, you kind of walk into that self-imposed jail with them, the doors will close behind you. The doors will close behind you, and it's going to be very difficult to make adjustments later on. So I want to share with you some strategy on how to deal with this particular personality effectively. And then I'm going to talk about, if you are rigid, what are some of the things that you can think of. So the first strategy really involves highlighting, because a lot of times rigid personalities, they don't want to hear about things new, different ways to do things. I was working on a project with a gentleman who extremely rigid. The team had come up with a totally new way to do things. Not only it would have produced more money, just a lot of beautiful, stellar ideas. He shut it down at every single pass. So one of the things that you can do, I found that highlighting the positives where alternatives are concerned doesn't necessarily make an impact. So what I did was talk about the consequences and the negatives if we didn't try it or go this way. Well, do you want to be responsible for impacting the bottom line by X amount of dollars? Do you want this project outbid, et cetera, et cetera? So you can see, again, it's kind of it flips it on its ear, because most people want to hear the positives. But for a person who's rigid and already generally has a more negative bend to their personality, for some reason, those negatives and those consequences of what could happen, you may get more movement, angling your communication from that direction. Secondly, holding up a mirror to an individual so that they can at least begin to see their behavior. The problem with rigid and inflexible people is the iron gates and boundaries they put up. Remember what I said, it's painful for them to step outside of that and do things like self-reflection. How am I coming off on other people? So oftentimes they just don't do it and don't even really have an understanding of how they're coming off. I had a woman, again, something had come up with my schedule. There was a certain time we were supposed to connect. I didn't get an opportunity to explain. I didn't get an opportunity to share. It was boom, whatever, this is done. I didn't let her get away with that. I said, look, let me explain something to you. Your reaction is a complete overreaction. Let me tell you why. We had flexibility over here. We had some flexibility over here in terms of having that conversation. Over here, there was an emergency. There was an unavoidable emergency. And a lot of times they just won't consider that. So it's important to stop them, however it may be uncomfortable in the moment, but really highlight just how rigid they actually are being in the moment or over time. And then thirdly, I want to highlight, be very wary, just like the girl who was paired up with this individual regarding her weight. Be very wary of stepping into that self-imposed jail with them, because it will close behind you. I have a young daughter, and one of my friends, she's a rigid personality. She has a young child too. Her children, our kids play together from time to time, but she has her children on an extremely strict and regimented diet. So it was snack time one day, and she kind of takes out, well, what she's put together for her children. I take out my daughter's snack, and she starts in on me with a lecture about, oh, this type of food, that type of food. And I, again, not going to enter the self-imposed jail with you. I said, I'm very well aware care. I want my daughter to eat healthy, and I want her to be able to navigate choices. So this is my choice for her. Thanks so much. She caught my drift. You know, nice lady, all that, but I'm not going to step over into that territory with you. So a lot of times, for as rigid of boundaries as they have set, you're going to have to set some boundaries too, so that you're not kind of pulled into that type territory. Nice person, we can hang out, but not going into this particular territory with you. You know, I have to say, if you're listening, I love the program because it's safe space, sharing, and elevation. And if you've come to the conclusion, you know what, I could be a little more flexible myself. The one piece of advice I have for you comes from Star Wars. May the force be with you. Sometimes you can live so regimented, not being able to let loose, kick up your heels, think along different new and refreshed lines of thought, that it can be very difficult when you venture out. There are some things that you just have to force. Everything is a muscle. You work that muscle and it gets easier and easier. And by no means am I saying get to the point of being so flexible, anything goes. If you've listened to my program, if you've read my books, there are certain things in my value system, certain things that I feel deeply, I believe deeply, they are non-negotiable for me. That said, I do leave room. There is flexibility in how I move because I want to learn. I want to grow. I know there's new ways of thinking and doing things. A couple years ago, I had a 14-year-old. She reached out to me. She follows me on YouTube and she said, Miss Robinson, I love your videos, but could you check this out? There's another platform that may be beneficial for you. Here's the analytics. Da, da, da. She had put all this stuff together. Who cares that she's 14? She's brilliant and she was right. And we talked and I followed her advice. I mean, information and new insights can come at any given time. It's important to stay flexible and kind, because when you do that, life gives you perks. It's really its own perks package. So I hope this video has made a difference for you, and I thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.